Hi everyone, welcome back. So brief hiatus here. Working on the Rollo-matic front end today. Happy to report my son was born a few weeks ago. Happy, healthy, everything's well. So had some good news going on. So that's kind of the reason for a little hiatus on this. But I know you guys didn't click to listen to that. So I took all this apart a few weeks back and I didn't show it taking it apart because, to be honest with you, there's so much grease in this stuff that you really wouldn't see what I was taking apart, until I cleaned everything. So I'm going to show you putting it back together, and I mean, there's really nothing to it taking it apart. I don't think there's any tips or tricks. So I'm going to show you how it goes all back together so you can see, how it comes apart is just the reverse. I took the actual steering shaft out. In order to do that, I just chained up the front end, and we'll kind of talk about it later in the video, but I just lifted the tractor off of it and left this sitting here to get it out. So to put this back together, to get this main shaft back in, so on the A's and the G's, they contain a bearing in the bottom here that sits in there. The B's do not. They just have like two plates that slide on each other. I know I showed that in my B video, and David from 1 Minute Farming, he actually modified his to have a bearing in it. He put in a bearing just like that. He had his B machined out down there to accommodate that. But anyway, so to get this back together, I have this in order of what goes back on the shaft before you put this up in there. So this is the bottom piece. It was a little bent up. I actually straightened it up a little bit. But I can imagine, being at the bottom of this, it gets hit by some things. You'll need a gasket. This cork washer sits in here. When I took this apart, this cork washer was just garbage. It just fell apart. This thing is not cheap. I mean, it's amazing. The cheapest I could find for this was like $32 for just a cork washer. Pretty sad, really. But hey, when you look at what you pay for gaskets in general. So then on top of that goes this real thin washer, and then the bearing. So I'm going to slide that on there. I'm just going to have it resting on there. I'm going to soak this in oil for a few minutes first. Get that on. Then I'm going to rig up the tractor again, lift it up, and we'll feed this back under. And from there, I'll talk about what was at the top also. Alright guys, so got that on, up in there. Here is the order of everything that goes on top. So starting at the bottom, there's this little packing. It's almost like a cork washer, but that goes first. The old one I think it was in pretty bad shape, and just crumbled apart. So you've got that. And you've got this little washer. Now you'll see it has this notch out of it. We will talk about that in just a second and where that goes. This is the eccentric bushing. So if any of you have watched my B video, it may be hard to tell in the video, but the hole for the steering shaft is off center from the center of this shank. Okay. Now this piece adjusts the engagement of this gear with your steering worm gear. So a lot of people have, not a lot, but people ask, oh, why is my front end all wobbly? Because there's too much slop. The one culprit is there's too much slop between this gear and your steering worm gear. So what you are able to do is rotate this and draw that eccentricity closer to the steering worm to get a tighter fit with this gear and your steering worm gear. So I'll show you that here in a second. And these notches here and that one in that washer is for a set screw that holds this in place. Obviously got to clean these pieces up before I put them in. So once that sits down in, and I'll show you kind of an intermediate step here in a few minutes, then these two washers go on top, and then your steering sector. Another culprit, if you are having steering issues, these can have broken teeth. My B had broken teeth, and an A that I took apart for parts had broken teeth also on the steering sector. And then last, you've got the washer that goes on top, and the nut, castle nut with the cotter pin through the shaft. So let me soak this in oil for a few minutes and get this in, and get the steering or the eccentric bushing in with the screw, and I'll show you how that goes. One thing to note, and I took a picture of its placement before I took it out, so you can see it spent probably most of its life on this notch here. However, when I took it out, the screw was in this notch. So I think somebody adjusted it at one point, so I'm going to put it back on this one. And again, you'll understand that in just a minute. So give me a couple seconds for you guys watching this. Okay, so looking down at your shaft here, you can see I've got the steering sector here, or sorry, not the steering sector, the eccentric bushing. I've got the washer underneath. And I've got that washer so that that notch is right where that screw is, to give you a little different angle here so you can see where that screw is. As I talked about, I'm in the third slot. So this is where, if you need to, you can take your steering sector off, the top nut, washer, steering sector, and the shims. Really don't have to take those shims off, and then just take a screwdriver and turn it either way. Odds are, I mean, if you've got a wobble issue, you want to turn it to the right, I think, because that draws it closer. So yeah, don't, like I had this all out, don't drop that screw down this hole, because it's an open hole even with this, with the shaft in there, because that eccentric bushing is larger. Drop that screw down that hole, you'll be searching for it, and drop the shaft out or something, or just replace it with new. I mean, nobody would know, I guess. But anyway, so we're gonna get the shims on, steering sector, washer, and top nut. Okay, so here you can see the final result. You want to tighten this nut. I don't have the manual on me, so it's supposed to have some clearance. If you were to put a dial indicator on here, check out my B video. I know I state the clearance in that. You put a dial indicator on here, and if you lift from the very bottom, it should only move so much. Again, kind of going with my old rule of thumb. If it's too tight, your steering shaft won't turn very easily, even just putting your hand on the bottom and turning it. I like to go where it's a little tight and then just back off a little bit and run the cotter pin through. So got to get a cotter pin yet for that. Moving on to the bottom. So we're going to start putting this Rollo-matic front end back together. So first, I've got a new felt washer. Here's the old one. That goes in this groove right here. Then from there, this piece goes on. There is a right and a left to these, just so you know. I had a broken gear tooth on one of them. These are the same on the late A's, so I was actually able to get that from a parts tractor. So that goes on. And then this plate kind of caps that right there to hold that on. and these 2 screws go on, and these screws have holes for lock wire. And then once that is on, you get a gasket and you put the cover on. So that just gets this arm assembly on. From there, the hub is its own separate entity. So if you needed to, you could pull all that off as one hub and all. But I'm just kind of going in the order here again, kind of reverse of how I took it off, and you know, kind of in order of building out. Okay, so you see I got that one on. I figured I'd take this moment in case anyone didn't really understand how the Rollo-matic front end works, or if you haven't figured it out by now. So we'll come to the other side here. So you can see this shaft here and this one are staggered, okay? And the other side has matching gear teeth, and you can see where they will meet up. So then how it works is if one side gets more load, say this side gets more load, it raises it up, and then as that rotates, this one will rotate the opposite direction, bringing this side down. That's in essence as simple as it gets. The 2 gears, since they interface with each other, as one rotates one way, one rotates the other. So as one gets more load, the other one comes down until they're evenly loaded. Pretty cool, really. I'd be curious to know, I think this was proprietary to John Deere until they quit making narrow front ends. I'm not sure if any other brand had anything similar. If so, it just shows my lack of education in the other brands. But anyways, so yeah, I'll get this other one on. I need to get the hubs painted. I got the wheels painted, and that'll be a story for later on why. So I want to paint the hubs, otherwise it's going to look weird. So yeah, we'll continue on this another day. Alright, so you can see we got these pieces back on. Putting them together, I don't know the actual rule of thumb to making sure that the teeth are lined up right, but I guess I kind of eyed it up to where I lifted this even. Sorry, you can see it there. Kind of made sure that this one here is going up a little bit since it's sitting lower, and then this one's facing down a little bit when they match up, kind of like that. So that's my best guess as to making sure that they are in the right spot. Now to get these on, put one on to show you it together, but first there are 2 felt washers here. You want to soak them in oil, stick them on, and then mine was already a part of this. I forget if I showed it in my B video, but I had this all apart. So you've got this felt retainer. It's kind of a sheet metal piece here. Actually, I got to take out the old felts. They're still in there. We'll get rid of those. Can actually see this felt retainer wanting to come out. Behind that is a bearing, another roller bearing, and an outer race. But again, we're putting new felt washers on, so we'll stick that on. And this is where things kind of got interesting looking back at the parts book. So you put this roller bearing in, and for some reason these washers were there on both sides. Those are not in the parts book. I think they're shim washers. There's some of them are different thicknesses. I get a little funny when I find parts that aren't in the parts book, because the parts book is kind of like the Bible. If it's there, it's meant to be there, unless it was a like a variant, you know, GNs, GHs, anything like that. But if it ain't in the parts book, well, I'm gonna go ahead and put them back in. So you can see on this side, we've got the bearing behind there. It's hard to really tell. I got a couple of those shim washers, and then of course we got this nut end piece on. Once you get this on and your cotter pin through, we'll tighten that bolt down also. Kind of cinches it down. So and from there, it's just a gasket and your cap. For grease, I don't think I've mentioned it up until now. All throughout here, I've used the corn head, John Deere corn head grease. Everyone talks about using it on the front end because I guess it doesn't separate as much or get oily or watered down. It stays thick, so you don't get a lot of like leaking, different areas going on. It stays much more viscous. So yeah, we're gonna get that one on and get the caps on. I've got gaskets made already for them. And then let's have a talk about wheels. So this was kind of a funny one. I obviously wasn't planning on painting anything, but I painted those hubs because I painted the wheels. But let's start with the beginning and you'll understand why I did what I did. So this wheel and this wheel were what came on it. Now this wheel here is a true John Deere rim, but it's not for this era of G. This is like a GM wheel before 1947. I know it's a true John Deere wheel because if you guys can see it, it says right there 1261R, JD 1261R. So that tells me it's a true wheel, not just some wagon wheel or anything like that. The noticeable thing on this is the cutouts. Now starting in 47, mid 47, they went to what they called the solid wheel. As you can see, there's no cutouts around the edges. Now the A's and the B's used a 1268R and the G used a 1290. Well, so I said to myself, well, I got one solid wheel, I want to at least make it original. So I need to order another 1290R. So I did. I ordered it. I got it. And I needed new tires. So while I wanted new tires on them, I coated the inside like a Rust-Oleum because that's kind of your worst enemy on these. It is rotting on the inside. So I ordered a 1290R and I got them all wire brushing them off. And right away, if you're looking, those are two different wheels. I said, uh-oh. Well, so like I said, this is a true 1290R. It was at that point that I realized that this one in the middle is not an original either. This is like a 1268, like what was on the A's and B's. And sadly, it is aftermarket because it does not have the John Deere number stamped anywhere around it. Another note, from what I've just picked up on, and you guys may find that it's not true, the originals have kind of these flanges to them. The aftermarket ones, let me see, maybe looking at the different side of the wheel. Okay, so surprisingly, this one does have flanges too. It doesn't have the rivets in it, or if you want to call it rivets, rivet heads. Now, I ordered brand new aftermarket rims for my B, and those didn't even have the flange on them. When I say it doesn't have the flange, this is solid all the way around. There's no scallop to it. So anyway, I'm going to have two different rims on here. Odds are you won't really know it, and I won't tell anyone if you guys won't tell anyone. But yeah, I've got the new tires mounted on there, and I don't feel like finding another one and painting it and getting the tire remounted on it, had to have that done and so on. So I'm curious to see what it looks like when it's on the tractor. Good news is it's on one side or the other that you're looking. So like I said, hopefully you won't see a difference. So yeah, we'll get these the rest of the way on. So I guess I should say. So anyways, this one, when I bought it, it was brown from rust. It was in good condition, but it was just brown from rust. Well, I didn't want an all brown wheel, much as I just not wanted to paint. So I painted that one up. Well, I'm going to paint that one up, then I got to paint this one up. And if I'm going to paint these up, then I got to paint the hubs up. Otherwise, it'll look goofy. So anyway, so that's why the hubs and the wheels are painted. Just spray can job, so it won't look brand new for long. It'll hopefully wear a little bit and kind of start matching the rest of the tractor. But yeah, the big thing was getting the inside coated with like a rust stopper and things like that. Okay. All right, everyone. So there you have it. I'm gonna end this video here. I got another set of lugs that I'll paint up, put on those at a later time. But for now, she's sitting on her own 4 wheels. So you guys have a good day. If you got any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Talk to you guys later.